Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Tina, for that wonderful introduction. She's absolutely right. I've been boots on the ground with many of you. I was at last year's conference. Some of you maybe met me there, or maybe you were outside the Supreme Court holding signs with me, fighting to get Justices Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett confirmed. Tina said it earlier, 2020 was a historic year, and we had no idea when we had the Pro-Life Summit last January that we were going to have the year that we did. But you guys stuck with us through that, and thank you for being here now. It's been, in many ways, a tough year. It was history making, but we have weathered a storm, and some of you watching tonight might even be discouraged after some of what we've experienced, even just in the last few months. And you might be wondering, does my voice even matter? Does my vote matter? Does lobbying matter? There's all sorts of questions that many people are asking. As grassroots director for Heritage Action, I'm constantly talking with people all across the country in all different walks of life. And there are many different ways to be an activist. And after you put so much effort into something, it can be discouraging if you feel like you haven't made a difference, or maybe it was wasted time. So I want to share a few thoughts tonight that will hopefully change your mind on that perspective if that's how you're feeling tonight. So a few things we're going to cover. We'll go over more philosophical, but I'm going to end with some really practical next steps for you. So the first thing I want to cover is, does lobbying still matter? This is a really basic question, but I think a lot of people have been asking this. This last election did not turn out the way most conservatives hoped that it would. And so many of us are asking that question, does it even matter? I fought so hard. I know many of you were even on the ground in Georgia fighting for the Senate to save conservative control in the Senate. And you maybe walked away from that door knocking experience thinking, man, did I even make a difference? And I'm here to tell you that yes, you did. Yes, you did make a difference. And yes, you should keep lobbying. Yes, you should still keep fighting. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, victory is never permanent and defeat is never final. That is so true in politics. There is always going to be another fight, and you cannot give up, because even when you win, if we get complacent, if we get comfortable, it is not permanent. The pendulum always swings in politics, and so we have to stay faithful, and that can be exhausting, but it's a really great reminder. I remind myself of it frequently, that while success is not permanent, my defeat is also not final. So keep fighting with us. I mentioned this past election, and that was discouraging for many people. I think it's really easy for people to put all their eggs in one basket when it comes to a presidential election. And yes, the president of the United States is very important. We're going to see a very drastic difference. We've already seen a very drastic difference from President Trump to now President Biden, and that does matter. So it's good that people care about that. A few examples even of why that matters. Just on President Biden's first day, we're exactly 1 week away. That's pretty crazy to me. A lot happens in a short amount of time in DC, and with President Biden, he made sure that was true. With his first day, he signed 17 executive orders. 17. That was really kind of record-breaking. For context, President Trump signed 5 on his first day, and that was considered to be a lot. So for President Biden to sign 17 is a pretty big deal, and we are expecting him to sign an executive order that would repeal the Mexico City policy. Some of you might already be familiar with this. The Mexico City policy is a policy that says American tax dollars cannot pay for abortions overseas. Now, we don't want to be paying for abortion in our country, let alone other countries. So this is a really important and long-standing policy. It started with President Reagan, and we do expect President Biden to overturn that. He's made it pretty clear where he stands on the issue of life, and that is not good. When it comes to the House and Senate, we also do not have majority there. So, man, that sounds pretty doom and gloom, doesn't it? But I think it's really important that we as conservatives do not give in to that doom. We do not give in to that defeat, because we were made for such a time as this. You are a part of this live stream right now for this fight. And it does not stop, because just because we lost the election in November, there are more fights to be had. We're going to talk a little bit later on about state and local policy and the impact that you can have there and why that's so important. But first I want to answer my next question, and that is, how do we fight when the game is rigged against us? It might feel like the deck is stacked, and no matter how hard you try, you might have been one of those students that was on the ground door knocking in Georgia and wondering, man, it seems like we did everything right. Look at the last 4 years and the conversations that we were able to have, the great policy we were able to pass, and maybe even friends that you won over to the pro-life movement, and to feel like you were doing so much, and yet, did we just lose it all? No, we did not. What we do is we don't give up, we adapt. We change our strategy and we keep fighting. A couple practical examples of this. At Heritage Action, I run a grassroots program called Sentinel. So we have an army of Sentinels across this country that are fighting for conservative policy and are joining weekly calls. We'll update them on what's going on Capitol Hill and let them know the fights sometimes that are happening behind closed doors, so that they can have influence with their members before it's too late. A lot of times when you're watching something on TV, if the news is talking about a policy, it's too late. It's already baked, so we want to make sure that our activists have that information. That's a lot of what our Sentinels are doing. They're just activists that just like you. So if you're interested in joining that, please do. But one of our Sentinels, Xavier Becerra from New Mexico, ran for Congress in 2018, and she lost that race. Now there was a lot of fraud in her case, and many of it proven. So we're not just talking about accusations. We're not talking about her feeling bad about losing. There was proven fraud. That election was outright stolen from her. Now, she pursued every legal avenue that she possibly could, but what she didn't do was give up. She didn't stay home. While she was pursuing those legal avenues, she was simultaneously fighting for her next campaign. She was door knocking. She was reaching new voters. She was changing minds. She did not let that loss, even though it was outright stolen from her, there was proven fraud. She didn't let that discourage her. She kept fighting. And I am thrilled to tell you that Representative Yvette Harrell is a freshman congresswoman this year. She ran again and she won outright in November and is now a freshman congressman. And I love that story, because it could have been so easy for her to be so discouraged, to think, man, the game is rigged against me. There's no way I can win. She could have easily given up, but she didn't. She fought harder. She pursued every legal avenue that she could, and then she kept going. She knocked on doors. She won people over, and it paid off. That's what I want us to do. I don't want us to be discouraged and stay down. I want us to fight harder and win. And if you do that, I believe that you will. An example of this on the left, and I'm going to share this because this is a two-sided thing, and there are people on the other side that feel the same way, and they don't give up, which means we shouldn't. And one thing that the left wants us to do is not only to lose in the elections, they want us to lose heart. If you give up now, you are doing exactly what the left wants. It would make it very easy for them if we just felt bad for ourselves, gave up, and went home. That'd be a pretty easy win for them next time. They don't want us only to lose, they want us to lose heart. So we have to fight against that. they could have stayed home when it came to the Georgia race because Georgia was a red state. Think about the past few years. Georgia was kind of shocking to us. That's been considered a red state for a very long time. And the left could have just said, oh, it's a red state. Don't worry about Georgia. Let's focus on the blue states. But they didn't do that. They flipped it. It's purple now. Now that was bad for us, but that's an example on the other side where they also did not give up. They did not neglect an area that seemed like a stretch. So I don't want us to do that either. I want us to always be taking the next step, always be thinking down the road, not just these short-term instant wins, but how can we continue to change hearts and minds, because that will pay off in the long run. Smart activism turns emotion into meaningful action. We don't want to just care about these things deeply. We want to be smart and be active about it. This is a war. We all know that. The left is waging a war for the heart of America, and we're going to meet them on the battlefield. So the next thing I want to say is that everything counts. And you've heard this before, your vote matters. Now, I've talked about fraud a little bit, some proven cases, and I think there's a narrative in our country right now that has a lot of people thinking, my vote doesn't matter. In fact, statistics are showing us in Georgia that a lot of rural counties stayed home. They might have been discouraged from the November election and felt like their vote didn't count, and they stayed home. But your vote definitely doesn't count if you're not showing up at the polls. So a situation or another election just this last November, another race that was won by 6 votes, not 600, not 6,000, 6. 6 people voted. This was a race in Iowa. Congresswoman Miller Meeks won this race by 6 votes. Now, can you imagine if those 6 people had stayed home? What if 10 people had stayed home? That is incredible. I'm still a little bit mind blown by that race that a U.S. Congresswoman was elected by 6 votes. That is incredible. So always remember that your vote does count. It does matter. That's an example of where your vote counts. Now I want to talk a little bit about state legislation and how much that matters as well. Every little bit counts. So in 2018, the CDC released data that showed abortion rates rising. That might not make sense to a lot of people because in 2018, we had a pro-life president. We had a conservative control of the House and Senate. We were fighting for good policy. Why in the world would abortion rates be increasing? The states. This is where much of the power does and should lie. Making change in Congress actually is kind of difficult. It might not be surprising to you guys. In some ways, this is a good thing. It allows the minority voice to not be pushed to the wayside and for legislation to just be shoved through. It is actually difficult to create change at the federal level. That's not as true at the state level. You can have a lot of impact at the state level. And I want to share a few numbers here with you that explain why the abortion rate increased in 2018. One of them were public policy changes. The state of Illinois started allowing elective abortions to be paid through their Medicaid program. This increased the abortion rate by over 9% in that year alone. Also in states like Texas, the FDA started making it easier to get a chemical abortion. So between 2017 and 2019, the number of chemical abortions obtained in Texas, now this is just one state, it increased by 32%. 32%, that's a lot. Between 2015 and 2018, the chemical abortion increase went from 25 to 40%. That is a huge huge increase. Tina mentioned earlier, you guys are fighting against abortion extremism. The majority of Americans in this country are not as extreme on abortion as the Democrats in today's political power. They're just not. Even people I talk to who consider themselves pro-choice do not agree with the far-reaching arm the government is that they're taking. So that should be encouraging to you in the sense that with public perception is important, public opinion matters. So if those people already agree with you in the extremism, having a conversation with them could sway their vote. It could impact state law. I just listed off, the stats that I listed were negative. We saw an increase in abortion. But those were all state laws. So I love hearing that you guys are having a lobby day tomorrow. That is so important, you guys. And if you can keep doing that, I promise you will see the fruit of your labor, but you have to stay in the fight. Don't ever give up. Your impact is so much greater than you could even imagine. At the federal level, I just want to encourage you guys. I think at this state, it's important that we fight defensively federally and we fight on offense at the state level. So at federal level, you might think, okay, does lobbying matter? It does, and here's why. We have been in the minority before, and often by a much more vast difference in the party lines. Right now, the margin of error is so slim. In the House, there are 222 Democrats to 212 Republicans. So we've already seen pieces of legislation going through the House that Speaker Pelosi has killed herself because moderate Democrats were uncomfortable with it. So she's already having problems passing some legislation. Now imagine with the conservative pressure that we can put on making sure that those moderates come over to our side or do not vote with party leadership. In the Senate, it's a 50-50 split. The only reason Democrats have control of the Senate is because Vice President Kamala Harris is the presiding president of the Senate. She's a tie-breaking vote. Otherwise, it's a 50-50 split. So the margin of error is so small. They cannot afford to have moderate Democrats flipping over. So the more pressure we can put on them, the better. The more we can slow down anything that they're trying to push through, including their nominations, which is what I want to give you guys an action item on as I close up tonight. Xavier Becerra is the nominee for Health and Human Services right now. He is best known for suing the Little Sisters of the Poor, forcing them to fund abortions with their money and violating their religious liberties, their deeply held beliefs. So this is a really important nominee to stop. If you want to help stop that, you can text LIFE to 51776. Text LIFE to 51776. That's just one way. You can also go to heritageaction.com/Sentinel to join. I know I mentioned that a little bit, and there are all sorts of resources that you can have and use as you lobby and understand more about these issues. But I want to close just with reminding you, I think it's worth remembering that the left wants us to give up. They want us to give up. So please do not lose heart. Know that your voice still matters. Everything you do matters. And to quote Winston Churchill, as he said it, success is not final, failure is not fatal, and the courage to continue is what counts. So have the courage, stick with us. Thank you so much for all that you're doing.
We're in a cultural battle. That's why Heritage Action created the Sentinel program, to empower conservatives to speak up, take action, and to hold your lawmakers accountable. And when Sentinels speak, Congress listens. Together, we're going to hold the line and advance conservatism for generations to come.